Henry was nearly lost in the throng. Joseph was pushed off the ramp into the river mud. He pulled himself up and threw himself onto the boat with his last ounce of strength. Finally, the ferry set off, rocking slowly. The river was massive, violent. Catherine stood on the deck, coughing into the cold wind, as St. Louis receded into the smoke of the steamboats. On the Illinois shore, Joseph looked ahead. The West was being left behind: guerrillas, Indians, the desert. Ahead was a new world: trains, factories, perhaps a hospital. By the time they reached Indianapolis, they had nothing left but hope. Catherine was exhausted, weakened by the journey, the illness, and years of struggle. They began searching for a military hospital. From then on, it was no longer a journey, it was a race against time. Arriving in Indianapolis after 2 years of wandering was not a victory, but a slow collapse into a place where no one expected them. They were drained of strength, their clothes worn thin by the road and their souls frayed by so many departures without return. Yet, once the train wheels stopped and the metallic din faded, Catherine felt an almost guilty sense of relief. They had arrived. The Civil War had just ended, and the city was simmering. Indianapolis had become a living hub of soldiers returning from the front, their uniforms filthy and smelling of smoke. One could hear the songs of drunks and the hurried footsteps of people who did not yet know what to do with peace. For a lone woman with 2 children and a cough that tore at her chest, however, the city had no mercy. It was overcrowded, expensive, and unforgiving. They sought shelter in the poorest neighborhoods near the railroad, where the ground vibrated at night from the trains and the air smelled of burnt coal and soot. The houses offered small, dark rooms, and occasionally a warm meal. Catherine paid in advance with her last bits of money or promised labor, washing laundry, cooking for families who asked no questions and gave only orders. Being Irish and Catholic, they knocked on the door of St. John the Evangelist's parish. The church was not just a place of prayer, but the only form of social support they knew. There, Catherine occasionally received bread, a thin soup, or a recommendation for a cheap room in exchange for community work. No one promised miracles, but they survived from one day to the next. School was not a right, but a luxury. Indiana's public system was only just taking shape, and maintenance fees kept many children away from the desks. Joseph entered the adult world early. He sold newspapers on the street, ran as a messenger through the station, and cleaned stables for a few cents. He learned to read from newspaper headlines, posters, and whatever his mother showed him when her coughing gave her a brief respite. Henry, at only 6 years old, attended parish school on Sundays. The rest of the time he stayed by Catherine's side,